Hi, and welcome back to The Joy of Tennis Teaching. My name's Dan Obashan, and I appreciate you stopping by and watching this video. In today's video, we're going to get started on 12 things that I think it's extremely critical for every tennis teaching professional to understand. These are aspects of teaching the sport that aren't the typical, stroke techniques or understanding how to do drills, but I believe understanding the difference in these things is very important. Today we're going to deal with the first 4 items on this list. And item number 1 is that, first of all, you have to understand that you are a service professional first and a tennis professional second. This is an important distinction. I love the individual nature of tennis. I love the battle, not just of strokes and fitness, but really the battle of intellect and wills that goes on in a tennis match. But let's face it, because tennis is an individual sport and we're out there doing battle all alone, it tends to foster a self-centered or very egocentric mindset among successful tennis players. Many years ago, I was speaking at the USTA Tennis Teachers Conference right before the US Open, and I was sitting in the speaker's room, and I had a chance to talk to Roy Barth, the legendary tennis director at Kiawah Island Resort. Roy was also a very top player. And I asked Roy a very important question for me at the time. I told him, I said, of all the segments of tennis professionals, we really have the least success in recruiting teaching professionals who came from the tour. And I asked Roy, why do you think that is? And Roy gave me a very clear answer. He says, because when you're a tour player, everything is about you. Even the tournaments focus on trying to make things better for the players. The players themselves have teachers and coaches, and especially nowadays, whole entourages of people that are just focused on you. But once you become a tennis teaching professional, you are now focused on the client. Your job is to provide good service, first of all and foremost. Roy had a very interesting, explanation of this to me. He says, the general manager at my resort walks by the tennis facility, and if the trash can is tipped over out on court number 10, he doesn't care that I beat Rod Laver at Forest Hills. He wants that trash picked up, and he wants the facility to be in good condition. So when you become a tennis teacher, your first responsibility is to your student, to your client, to your boss. You have to become a service professional first of all. The second item on our list is learning names. Sounds simple, but again, if you have a self-centered attitude and you're not thinking about others, this can be difficult. I've worked in many clinics and tennis camps where the students were literally blown away. It was one of their highlights how the tennis staff learned everybody's name so quickly. Everybody loves hearing their name. So if you're teaching in a group environment, use your students' names. Learn those names quickly. Dennis Vandermeer was legendary in his ability to learn a high volume of tennis players' names who came to the workout in their camps and clinics and coaches' workshops at Hilton Head Island. So really learn the names and you will get a great benefit from that skill. Third is enthusiasm is contagious. We've heard that all the time. You're out there, and if you're an enthusiastic teacher, the energy of your lessons will raise up. Many years ago in the late 80s, I was director of tennis at what's now called the JW Marriott Desert Springs. And in season, we had 5 or 6 teaching professionals working at the same time. They were always of different levels of experience, but the client didn't care about that. The client wanted every person they were paying for to be the top tennis professional they could. Well, one day, one of the more experienced professionals on our staff walked in and asked me about the newest pro, and he said, "Have you seen Frank teach?" And I was like, no, he had just arrived and I hadn't had a chance to watch his teaching yet. And he was like, well, man, I don't know what he learned in training, but his teaching is not up to the standards that we always say that we have here at this resort. Well, this concerned me. So the next day I went out and I made a point of watching one of his lessons. And he was like an overgrown puppy dog out there, running around, picking up balls on the run, hitting tweeners, racing around, just total enthusiasm. He was incredible. But what he was teaching was a nightmare. I couldn't believe it. It was literally one of the worst tennis lessons from a technical standpoint that I had ever seen. So I waited until the end of the lesson. And when the student came off the court, I introduced myself and I said, "Hi, I'm Dan Aubuchon. I'm the director of tennis here. And I'd like to check in and find out what students thought of their lesson." Well, this woman said to me, "That was the best lesson I ever had in my life." She said, "I'm running right in now to book another one for tomorrow." Well, I was literally shocked. I couldn't believe it because the drills, the concepts that were being taught, the whole thing was a total mess. But she was really happy and excited about it. And she went in and booked another lesson. So I went in and I started studying the lesson book. And in Frank's short time at our resort, he was number 2 of the 6 teaching professionals in booking repeat lessons. That was shocking to me. But it really emphasized this point that enthusiasm is contagious and students love how they felt on the court with Frank's just exuberance and care for them. So we had a tennis meeting among the pros in the next few days, and I told the staff that I wanted them all to teach like Frank. Well, I got pretty strong pushback from the more experienced pros. And they said, no, you're not understanding me. I don't want you to teach what Frank is teaching. I want you to teach like Frank. I want you to, use his enthusiasm and example and his energy on the court. That's what students respond to. And I pointed out to Frank that we were going to do some real serious training to upgrade his analytical skills, his tennis teaching technique. And he ended up becoming a marvelous teaching pro with a little bit more study and work on the technical aspects of his game. So remember, enthusiasm is contagious. The students will see that in your lessons and they will respond to it. I guarantee it. And number 4 on our list for today might sound like a contradiction. In the last video, I talked about how students don't really take lessons to improve. They take lessons based on how they feel about the interaction with the professional. What kind of an environment does the professional create? And our last point, that enthusiasm is so important, is another example of that. But this point that I want you to understand, and it's a subtle but important distinction, is that you can't depend on personality alone. If you're depending on personality alone, you will burn out. You will have lots of lessons. Your students will rebook. Your students will be happy, but it'll be a drain on you. You want to improve your students' level of game because that's what we're paid to do, obviously. But more importantly, it's because if you see your students improving, it will motivate you to keep going. If you're kind of bluffing it and getting by on personality and enthusiasm, but you really know deep down that your students are stuck at the same level no matter what you tell them, it's going to burn you out. I remember one of my very first jobs at an indoor club in Massachusetts. The director of tennis there was a great player, very enthusiastic guy, tons of personality. But looking back on it now, his tennis teaching was very cliche, very old school, didn't really focus on the students. It was kind of the like the old joke, racket back, bend your knees, that'll be $50, please. It was every student got the same routine. After I'd been in PBI for a number of years, I happened to run into this tennis professional, and I asked him if he was still teaching, and he said no, teaching got boring for him. This is amazing to me, because to me, tennis teaching is never boring. Every student is a blank canvas. What can I do to figure out how to make that student improve? How can I make that student better? So here I am, almost 50 years into tennis teaching, and I still love it as much as, probably more, than the first day that I started. So remember, personality is important, but you want your tennis skills your tennis teaching skills to be focused on improving the student, not only for their benefit, but for your motivation as a teacher. So those are our first 4 points. You are a service professional first and foremost. You want to always spend the effort and time to learn the names of your students, especially in group teaching settings. Enthusiasm is contagious. Bring the energy to the court, bring the enthusiasm. Your students will respond to it. And remember, don't depend only on your personality. Strive to improve your students, because that will help you to avoid burnout. And our next 4, we're going to focus a little bit more on how to become a better teacher of the game. Thanks very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you'll hit the like button, subscribe, pass it on to your friends, and I look forward to your comments. Thanks very much. This is Dan Aubuchon for the Joy of Tennis Teaching.